Blog Talk Radio.
We welcome the night. Oasis, our radio show where we discuss all the latest movies and news from the world of horror. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Ian. Ian, are you there?
I am.
How did your fourth go? Everything go well on your end?
Yeah, it went pretty well.
That is great to hear. Everything, but again, besides my things that I mentioned last week, my small little illness, I'm doing okay, doing well. So that is good news. And good to look at that in a bright way. But we are here tonight to continue on our Indie-Pendence Horror Marathon with our second show. And this one, I'm kind of happy came out of nowhere. I was throwing things through my head, and then one thing led to another, and here we are with show number 2. And with a little film that I'm looking forward to talking about because it's going to be a fun one to discuss, and there's some things we got to discuss on. But we have a film here, giving a little bit of backstory on tonight's film. Last year, around this time last year, is when when I came across the original short film called, of Tapehead. I believe it was on YouTube, and they were DVDs, and were like showing up, and like, I'm gonna see what's going on with this one, and it was on YouTube, and I watched it, I had fun with it, and around that time, I believe Mattson, he was working on making it a feature, and so here we are, again around that time when I first discovered the short, about a year later. And we have the feature completed, and we are going to be reviewing Tapehead, The Return of Jacob Cobb. Now, for those who do not know, everything's fairly easy to find here. You can go on to Facebook.com. Tapehead, the movie, is the place you want to go if you want to get any information about the short or the feature of the film. And keep up to date. Because, again, I'm sure there's going to be more series of Tapeheads to come. But, yeah, that's that part of it, the promotional stuff out of the way. It's interesting, just to see that a year later, here we are with the feature. And now Tapehead, the short, is about, they do a little bit of this in the beginning of the feature, but I'll give a little bit of backstory on the short, is that Tapehead is about Jacob Cobb. He's a mentally challenged person who works in a video store, and they're sort of closing down. Well, not closing down, but they're getting ready. This is like happening in 2001, even though I don't know if the year was in the short or not. I think it was. But they're taking all the VHS and they're converting them, They're getting rid of those and putting them to DVD because, this is 2001, so it's about the heyday of DVD. And they accidentally kill Jacob, 2 employees that work there. And then, of course, Jacob comes back from the grave in the short. And we have that, the precursor, a little bit of backstory into the feature here, where we get that done in sort of a news-style portion of the show where it's like backstory, like news articles of what happened, and like Jacob, how he was like born with the deformity, and they just go on, the history of the town, because it takes place in a town in Illinois. And now the feature takes place 20 years after that, so it's 2021. And we're introduced to Pam and her little brother Corey, and her mother is going away out for work, and that leaves Pam there to take care of Corey. And of course, Pam wants to do what teenage girls wants to do and invite her friend over to come over. And her mother doesn't like her. Her name's Faith, but Faith comes over, and we'll get to Faith here in a little second. And then we're introduced to Blake and Chad. Blake is Pam's boyfriend that she is eventually wanting to dump, and Chad's the best friend. And they go to a estate sale or yard sale, and they find this box of VHS tapes and a VHS player, VCR, and so they buy it. And Blake, he's sort of a condescending asshole in a sense, where he's just like, his point of view is the only right way, no matter how he acts. So he's kind of a prick, but he's not like one of those mean-spirited pricks. He's just like, I don't care prick, like, oh, I'm sorry about your baby's death, your husband's death, like, I don't care. I got to go. I got more important things to do with my time than to listen to your sappy story on what happened to your husband. And he's just like, again, just only cares about himself, even though he's not like I said, he's not a mean guy. He's just condescending and thinks of himself. And so they get the box of tapes, and they go to Pam's house, and then they set up everything and basically have a movie night with old VHS. And the tape rewinder and the VCR and the VHS all came from the closed-down video store that Jacob worked at called Video Barn, and that causes him, again, quote-unquote, to somehow be resurrected from his grave again. And that is the gist of the movie. Okay. I liked the short. I enjoyed the short. I had fun with the short. Ian, did you watch the short before the feature that I sent you? Because I sent you both.
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to.
Okay.
I actually was thinking today was Thursday.
It's all right. But I'll just say, the short is very, concise and to the point, where it's like one place, in the video store, in the Video Barn, and Jacob comes back and he starts killing, people that come into the video store, plus the 2 people that killed him. And it's very quick and to the point. And it had some good, it worked well. This one, here's the thing. I didn't hate it. All right, we're gonna probably do some back and forth here with a few other films that we talked about. It's definitely better than, like we always do. Like I said, it was just, for what it was trying to do, I felt like, again, I mean this in the most polite way possible, it was too basic for the idea of Jacob Cobb, because I love the idea of Jacob Cobb. I love the look of Jacob. I love he has a VHS and he tapes it around, he uses the tape reels, wrap it around his head, the corpse, he's rotting, he has the overalls and the long, long sleeve shirt underneath, the Carhartt shirt, long john shirt, whatever, and he's going around murdering people, and he has a great look. The thing is, everything else around it is the most basic slasher premise. And for something, again, for the first, it's a short to feature. You want to try to expand it and get the lore out there. And I felt like they didn't really get a chance to do too much of lore building between Jacob Cobb. He just magically appears because he had his stuff from the video barn, because he rewinded tapes, and that was his thing. And that somehow magically awakened him from the grave. They didn't really explore too much with why. And again, I understand that. It's the first one. You want to just make something simplistic and get it, everyone enjoyed, the film was having fun. I'm not saying anything bad against that. I'm just saying for what they were trying to do, it just felt very basic. Like it was your straightforward basic slasher with an interesting killer, and he didn't really do much with the killer. Sadly, I mean, I get the nods and the to other films. I like when he found the shears in the garbage can from the guy that stole it at the yard sale earlier, and he did the burning nod with Cropsey with the shears coming up over his head. I like the mad nod when he has the axe and he's walking towards the camera. There's the psycho nod, of course, and then there's, of course, Jason Voorhees with the Kane Hodder where he just sat straight up Undertaker style. I like all the nods and everything that they were going for, but like everything else, it was just all the other characters. I mean, it's a slasher movie. It's supposed to be simplistic characters, but it's just like brother and sister, and she's supposed to watch it, and they're just sitting around doing nothing. It's like that one film, Mrs. Claus, where it's just people sitting around talking, and it's like, oh, there's a random killer there. It's just like this one. They're just sitting around watching tapes, and like they're not really doing much, and then like Jacob's just killing people whenever someone says a derogatory term, the offensive term towards him. And they don't really do much with it. Like, I wanted a little bit more of the backstory of Jacob. Maybe we'll get that, Terrifier 2 style, where like they add more lore in the second one than they do in the first one. I kind of got feelings like Terrifier 2 in this one as well with the brother and sister dynamic. But again, like I didn't hate it. I for what it was all right. It's just like it just didn't really do much, and I mean that in the best way possible. It was just again like I know it's a basic slasher, but like even Jacob reminded me of another film called Jonah Lives, and he's just like almost like the same. Besides the overalls, it's like the same thing. A group of people come together and they raise a dead guy from the grave, and it's just like it's very simple. It's been there, done that. And again, I don't mean that in a bad way. I really don't. I mean, honestly, comparatively speaking, like there's a lot of stuff that we reviewed. Like this is definitely something way better than something say like Night of the Bong Phase 2, where that film was rough. And I'm bringing all these other films up that we reviewed over the years, and it's just like there's another film called Pickaxe. We didn't review that one, but that one wasn't very good, and I liked this one, Tapehead, more than Pickaxe. So there's some out there just like, and of course, and like again, I like the gore in the film. It's very for what it is. It's very simplistic. It's not simplistic gore, but it's like very decently done effects for the budget. I do think they did well. Again, I don't fly on acting, but for those listening that when they put this in or watch it, it's very wooden. And again, we don't really go back and forth on acting. We've seen an 8-year-old act. And, I say that over and over. Like we've seen an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So this is definitely not bad, but it definitely for those not officiated with the low budget stuff, the stigma of just like a bunch of people coming together and acting, doing a film, like it has sort of that wooden atmosphere and tone to it. It's just very like and action. They start going like again they're having fun, and I'm not knocking them for having fun making a movie. It's just very the whole premise is like just basic. I mean, it's like there's another film called Death on Demand where it's just like a killer in a house attacking people in violent ways. Like they're very like they kind of shy around from like everything like Jacob related in a sense because like you want to know more about Jacob, and like what again, you want like some kind of connectivity with the killer, and it just seems like just a random menace in a sense, bulking menace killing people is unstoppable, a la Jason or Michael Myers and stuff like that. But yeah, like again, I didn't hate it. It's just it definitely. I mean, they had fun. I'm not knocking that for them. Again, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed certain aspects of it, but they're again, I get it's low budget, and we say that a lot. It's low budget. You work with your means, but I felt like there needed to be more meat on the bones with the just Jacob Cobb character. And again, like I said, they'll probably continue that on with the sequel, or if they continue on with the franchise, and give them maybe some more lore building. But it's just like at the time, it's like it's an okay, homage to 80s slashers. I mean, that's what he wanted to do. That's what he did. I just wish there was a little bit more done with, again, Jacob and like what caused him to come back and all the other stuff. And like, it just felt like it was just like a great idea in a very simple premise. It's just like you put Godzilla in like a Akira Kurosawa film. It's like it's out of place. It's just like that. Let's put like Jaws inside a movie that's like, I don't know, the X-Files, and like what it's out of place. Just like doesn't make. It just seems out of place for what they're trying to do. And again, I mean that in the best way possible. But again, I talked on and rambled on enough. What's your thoughts? And we'll go back and forth.
Well, I personally thought it, I didn't hate it either. Like you said, I agree with a lot of what you said. It did drag on in a lot of places. I really wish they did more with the killer, because there was times where I was just like, is this just a movie about people watching, movies, or is there a killer? But, I mean, that happens. And I definitely saw that they enjoyed what they were making. And, but yeah, it was a nice little solid film. I do also wish they did more with the lore and, like why he came back. And, it just, I don't know, but I did like the way the killer looked. I like the tape for a mask thing. I did, and like the little nods, like busting the door down with an axe, and then they're like huddled looking at the door screaming. I was like, nice little Shining-esque. Like that's what I was like, it's cute that they're like doing all these little homages to the old horror slashers and all that came before it. It felt like they were trying to write a love letter.
Oh yeah.
To it, and I was like, but I think they did pretty well. Especially for like one, a low budget movie. It looked great. It sounded great. I mean, the acting was kind of like, but that's always to like I'm not going to say it was terrible.
No, the acting again. We bring it up all the time. Acting's the least of the worries of the film. I mean,
exactly.
Again, we've seen worse.
Oh, definitely. And when you gotta like kind of just like nitpicking a little bit, that just means like there wasn't anything like really wrong with the film, like other than just like a few little here and there things, but they're mild comparatively. We've watched movies that made us want to smash our heads into walls to forget them. So
that's the reason I brought up Not the Bong Face too, because that film had like the great idea of a killer, a guy that was like a demon, and he has like a bong, and he's like weed chains around him, and they don't do anything with it. And like that's his only reason.
Yeah.
Of course, that film's not good at all. That film is not good. That film was rough to get through, and it had so many problems. This one, I didn't find that many issues I had with it, besides just like I wanted a little bit more with what was given. And again, I guess that's a detriment in a sense, because like, you know, that's kind of how they did it with Terrifier, you know, like, you want a little bit more, and then they give you a 2-hour and a half movie. Like, all right, yeah, that's definitely more. And it's just like the same thing, like, you know, like it's very, as I said, like it's very concise, you know, like it's only like an hour and 13 minutes, without counting the credits and the outtakes on the end. But it is still to the point, but they just kind of don't really do that much with it. And it's like it's kind of like how it was last week, you know, like with Reunion from Hell. It's just a bunch of people talking, and this one is just a bunch of people watching tapes. You know, it's just like you kind of want to see a little bit more, and like they bring up the brother, you know, Corey, and like how he's supposed to be like this whiz of everything, and all he does is just rock out in his room, listen to music, and play, you know, wrestling video games, and he's kind of just like side character, you know. And it's just like, I mean, it's fodder characters, but like they needed to give him some depth a little bit, even though they're just here and there. And then the cops,
exactly.
Like they're just there, like for a little bit of backstory, like that happened so many years ago, you know, like you just like they did that. You know, like you can have like characters like the cops, like bring up certain aspects of the past to happen, or the old lady. You know, like they try to do that to sprinkle it in there. Like the wife at the estate sale mentioned that, you know, how the tapes got to her because her husband, you know, used to work there or something, and like apparently like the shop owner killed himself as well, and like you know, like all these little things that like could, you know, like it just comes like it doesn't really matter. I mean, I know you're trying to sprinkle in some plot elements throughout to understand what happened to some certain characters and histories, you know, since the incident happened in 2001 with Jacob and everything. But like there needed to be a little bit more with Jacob in general, just because like, you touched his rewinder and now it's like a magical genie lamp and he rises from the dead, you know. I don't know. It's just like there's a little bit missing there with Jacob's story that needed to be touched on a little bit more. And again, maybe that'll come in the sequel. Again, just a little, you know, so I have that little, you know, light in my head, like hoping that there's a little bit more there, continuation with Jacob with the sequel. But again, like for the film itself, it's fine. Like it's a quick watch, it's fine. If you enjoy your slashers, it has some solid kills, you know, gory kills. It's, you know, decent for the budget. You know, don't honestly, I'm saying Terrifier 2. Don't go in expecting Terrifier 2. All right, it's not going to be that type of in-your-face gore. It works for its budget, and it does well. You know, there's some eyes being ripped out. There's some heads being smashed. There's some stabbings. There's some good stuff, you know, decent, okay stuff in there for a low-budget slasher for this nature. It's just, again, if you're wanting, you know, a character, you know, if you just want a simple slasher, you're going to like this. You know, that's sort of how we mentioned with the Reunion from Hell last week. You know, it's very simple, to the point. It covers all your bases. This one, of course, is a little bit more with the practical effects, more of the outlandish, you know, nods to the 80s slasher villains. You know, you have, you know, sort of like, you know, the Prowler and like I said, Madman, all the things that he's nodding to, Cropsy from The Burning. You have all that. But, you know, again, even with those films I bring up, you know, they do enough to get you invested with the killer. You know, you get the backstory of Cropsy. You get the backstory of Madman Mars. And like this one, you just get a little hints throughout, you know, littered throughout, instead of like a good lore building piece at the beginning, and then that sets into motion the rest of the, you know, series of events as the film progresses. This one is just like oh, he's alive. It's just like it comes out of place in a sense. And again, you're looking at like a Jason film, like, oh, a dog pissed on his grave and he comes back to life. It's like it's not that crazy, but at least that made sense. It's like, but it's just one of those stupid things for horror movies. But nonetheless, like again, I didn't hate it. I just wish it was a little bit more concise. Like with the short taking place in the video store. It's like 40 minutes, and it's like boom to the point. You get your backstory with Jacob. You get him killing people and getting revenge for killing him, and it's just straight to the point. This one, again, it lingers around too much with the characters and just minimalist, just like dialogue that really, like, oh, I like Chad, and I want this. I want you to do this. I want you to do that, and then it's just like it's very minimalist. And again, I mean that in the best way possible. It's just like very straightforward. Again, I'm saying that with like a good portion of my heart. And it's just very minimalist. And like again, for a feature, your first feature, I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad. So we said last week with the Reunion from Hell as well. You went out there, you did it, and like again, there's work to be had to continue on to become the next film. Continue that next work. You never know, and you just take what you learned and you work with it, and you keep going, and you keep working your craft as an indie filmmaker, and just hope for the best, and just like keep at it, and like you'll work towards that's how we did with like Michael Taylor Pritt. Like each film he kept going no matter what people said, and like even our criticisms. He still went out there and did his own thing and just kept working, and like some films worked, some films didn't, and he still he did his craft until he's not really doing it that much anymore, but he went out there and did his thing, and that's what we take. We're trying to give our thoughts and our opinions, and you have some good, you have
exactly.
some bad.
Yeah. And I'm kind of sad to see that he's not doing as much lately, but we've had a lot of good people, directors on here talking about their passion, and it's always so nice to hear them talk about it. And we've had some people take our criticism to and did something with it. Even reshooting an entire movie and to fix all the little problems and mistakes. And some people get mad, but we try our hardest to be genuine. We don't want to just say a movie is good even though we don't really believe that, because that's just disingenuous, and we just throw our opinions out there and just without any malice toward it. So
yeah, we try to do our best, our opinions. It is an opinion. Everyone's some people's going to go out there and they're going to praise it, and we see, and we review it, we have the the reviewer eyes mentality on stuff, and we see the good and the bad, and we try to see the strengths and the weaknesses and try to combine them together, and where it works together. Sometimes it's a perfect harmony, sometimes it's not. And this one, I didn't hate it. I had some fun with it, some of the gore and some of the nods, but just it needed a little bit more work to make it more. Like I said, it's an easily digestible film. If you like your slasher films, you're going to enjoy it. If you like your bulky killer films, you're going to like it. Again, I didn't hate it. I had some fun with it, with some of the gore. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I like the nods. But the story is just basic. And again, like I said, I said it before, I'll say it again. I mean that in the best way possible. It's just, your simple slasher that it just needed work on the killer ass. And yet, again, like I said, I liked Jacob Cobb, but there needed to be more like with him. Like you really, technically, you really have to get the short and watch that before the film, because that'll give you some of the back history. Again, I know he did a neutered down version at the beginning of the film, but again, even with that, you still need a little bit more to continue on, like what is making Jacob, like, it's just like, oh, he wants his stuff back. It doesn't really make any sense, like why he's coming back for his tape rewinder. I mean, yeah, it's a part of him because it's what he did in the video store. That was his job. But it's just like, why is he after the people for, is it just he wants his property back? Is that it? I mean, he kind of says that, like, give it back when he's attacking Pam.
Yeah.
But, like, they don't really, he's not really saying much throughout the film or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, his first, he starts talking, like, give it back out of nowhere. Like, they could have done that a little bit better earlier on, like tapes or something, like, just like one-word little things or hints to, like, continue on, the lore building of his character, to, like, what he wants to do. But he's just going around there and just randomly, whenever someone says a offensive term towards him, he kills him. It's like, oh, so you're, it's like, it just seems like out of place, and all of a sudden, like, oh, now I want my stuff back, or whatever he wants to do, like, brought him back to life. But yeah, I mean, that's the only really drawback I have. I mean, again, like, I everything else was fine. The pacing was a little hit and miss. But again, because it's just simple, like they don't really do that much. I mean, I love the nods. I enjoyed the nods. I was like calling them out, like, oh, that. And it was funny to see all the posters in the kids' room. Those, like, knockoffs of, like, I like the one for Dead Alive, which was B-Mouth. That was funny. And then Alien was just space. So it was kind of funny to see the posters on the wall. But yeah, like the film itself, it was fine. I didn't have, again, besides what was already discussed, I mean, that's really my only complaints with the film. It was just a perfectly okay slasher film. People had fun making it, and that's, again, I can't knock that. I mean, they went out there and they had fun for, however long it took, a couple months, a year,
exactly.
And they got this thing and they finished it and they had a fun time doing it. And I can't knock that. I'm not going to knock that because it shows, the passion in the craft. It's like us if we went out and did something and it turned out to be shit. Like, we'd had passion for the film, we were making. And, whatever, it's like two dudes reviewing it, like, oh, well, they said it was shit. Like, well, we had fun. I'm not going to knock that, because you live in the moment and you enjoy what you want to do. And like I said, we enjoy doing these radio shows. We don't get anything out of it except for just to pass the time and to hopefully to help some filmmakers get their films out there. And, we try our best to be as brutally honest as we can. And some people like it, some people don't. And, we've had our ups and downs reviewing these films for these Indie-Pendence marathons over the years. And it's I said it last week, it's one of my favorite times when we review new indie horror. And again, I appreciate all the work that was put into the film. It needed a little bit more time to age, in a sense, in a movie way. Just let it sit on it for a minute and then go over it again. Kind of not rush into it and just make a basic, I mean it in the best way possible, just your average hulking slasher, It just
right.
had that, same thing, numerous times before, and they just kind of had a cool killer, but the wraparound, everything else in it was just like, like that's my only complaint. Hopefully, again, continuing on with the series of Tapehead, and they kind of keep building on to what has been already built. But again, I'm looking forward to whatever else comes.
Same.
But I do appreciate Dustin for allowing us to review this. I did reach out to him and ask him if he wanted this film to be on our show, and he was grateful, and gracious enough to allow us to view the film. And again, hopefully you understand our criticism and not one of those that bad mouth afterwards. But again, it's criticism.
Right.
It's always hit and miss. But again, we appreciate the opportunity to actually review the film. I mean, it just literally, it's not been out that long, and to be able to include it on this year's marathon, I'm appreciative of it. So I do thank you, Dustin, for allowing us to review the film, and hopefully
I appreciate it.
Understand our thoughts on the film and understand where we're coming from. But Ian, you got any final thoughts before we call this a night?
I think we said everything that can be said, so.
All right. Well, Ian, as always, it's great talking with you, no matter what we do, and I hope everything goes well. And, again, we want to thank you, Dustin, and everyone else for listening to our review for our second episode of the Indie-Pendence Horror Marathon for 2023. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time for Horror Not Oasis.
Good night.